I think we're getting a very bad impression from the media. And one of the things that's given a really bad impression, bad leadership, is the constant vision of MPs who are in the media with their houses being surrounded by a media scrum waiting for them to come out of the front door and give a statement. Not only MPs, Piers Morgan and so on. And this gives the impression that this is something that is legitimate. It's not legitimate, by the way. And that sort of harassment, whether this is in person or doxing or whatever, this is abuse. And Tobias Ellwood, who's a Conservative MP, his house was under siege last night, so much so that he couldn't go back to it. The police protected the house, of course. 60-odd people were protesting about Palestine around his house. This isn't the way to behave. A while ago, I had a doxing experience. I didn't know about doxing. Fascinating. I thought there was some sort of Shakespearean concept. Doxing is where your personal details, particularly your home address and so on, are broadcast, and there were particular people who were doing this, and other people were saying, well, we know where you are anyway, all we have to do is follow your videos. It doesn't matter whether you know. The abuse is the Computer Misuse Act, and it's about using a computer for nefarious purposes to intimidate and to threaten, and that's effectively what it is. It constitutes a form of harassment. It falls under the TPFHA, the Protection from Harassment Act, which presumably has been infringed by the people who were standing outside Tobias Ellwood's house. It's not a protest; it's intimidation. When you threaten somebody's home. So it's not just that person who lives at that home, it's his family as well. You don't know anything about his family. And similarly, if somebody is doxing from another country, it doesn't mean that those laws don't apply when you threaten a UK citizen and the person targeting you is from another country. The data they're using is protected, protects the UK citizen, and the law that can be applied is a law that is UK law, which can be enforced, and online services can be invoked to protect people. I find it very worrying. In my own case, I didn't really know what doxing was. I had to have it explained to me, and I was very entertained to discover. But in the case of Ellwood, in the case of Piers Morgan, I don't like Piers Morgan, but I don't think he should be doorstepped. And I think that idea of doorstepping politicians and famous people by the media needs to stop, because it's sending out the wrong example. There are plenty of other places where you can doorstep people. The place where maybe the place where they're working is legitimate. I don't know. But it's more legitimate than doorstepping somebody outside their home, which is detestable. Utterly detestable. And it needs to stop. I think we may need a law to stop it. More important to stop that than to mess around the place trying to restart the Rwanda nonsense. It's time the government recognised its responsibilities. Its responsibilities are to protect the people in this country. That means it needs to protect their lives, their livelihoods. And that means when the system has gone wrong, it needs to be ensuring proper reparation, proper compensation, proper apology, and a resetting of the system. That means a resetting of the system for the people who were caught up in the Windrush scandal, the stupidity of Theresa May. That means a resetting of the system for the people who were caught up in the haemophilia blood contamination scandal, a resetting of the system. Still, people still left uncompensated. Their lives were threatened by the stupidity of people in power. Of course, the post office stuff. Not just one computer failure, but at least two. How can that happen? How can that happen? And then I don't think it's the computer failure that is the problem. What's the problem is the arrogance of Post Office Limited with the support of the government. Similarly, the NHS, the arrogance of NHS bureaucrats, senior management, with the support and connivance of government ministers, maybe even with the manipulation of our legal system, which is really shocking. Can we not rely on our law anymore? When somebody is a whistleblower, they are supposed to be protected, and they're supposed to be doing a service to our country. And yet what seems to be happening, particularly in the NHS, is they are crucified by red tape and bureaucracy, by the same bureaucrats that they are complaining about. And on a process of administrative detail, their efforts to try and get justice, their efforts to try to be heard, are utterly frustrated again and again and again. When middle management and top management are determined to get rid of people because they don't like them. The moment you start looking at all this stuff, you see it's like opening up a can of worms. Snakes, indeed. And that is our bureaucratic system. And the bureaucrats are sitting pretty. And again, somebody in the comments said, why do I always go on about bureaucrats? Because they don't do very much. And they do it badly. And when they're questioned, they are vicious. The bureaucrats, the bureaucracy, is there to support the people who are actually doing the work, not to lord it over them. And we've given bureaucrats significantly too much power, and too much money, and too much job security, when they take that job security away from others. And they're there in the NHS, and they're there in the police force, and they're there in teaching, and they're there in law. And they do nothing to justify their existence. And they get it wrong, and they get it wrong, and they get it wrong, simply doing the job. The Home Office is a really good example of bureaucrats out of control, not capable of doing the job that they've got, and yet taking on other jobs, just enjoying using their authority because they can, because they have a pen. It needs to change.